cards from the state. We will receive one this year, but that did not stop us from having what's called our federal report card. We do have all of our data posted on our website under GPS and data. By law, we must include things like I read, I learn, SAT, and so on. In our federal report cards, there are several indicators that we're graded and scored on. We have ELA and math academic achievement. We have ELA math academic progress, ELA math closing achievement gap, graduation rate, strength of diploma, progress in achieving English language proficiency, and then addressing absenteeism. You'll notice that 2 of these only pertain to elementary and middle school, with the graduation rate, of course, pertaining only to high school. Here's our current status for our federal report cards. The school overall rating for all of our schools does not meet expectations. I did highlight, however, the growth for each building. For example, Central, Harrison, and Lincoln, as well as McKinley, this year have increased their performance. We did not receive report cards for 2021 due to COVID. As you're going through the report card, you'll have some literature there to help explain the titles they give us per each domain, which includes exceeds expectations, meets expectations, approaches expectations, and does not meet expectations. We'll start off with our academic achievement. For academic achievement, it does not go with or applicable with Central High School, but we are scored on ELA and mathematics. For ELA academic achievement, it measures the proficiency that our students do, so it's the pass rate as well as the participation. We had 3 schools who did increase, Harrison, Lincoln, and McKinley, that did increase their academic achievement, with Lincoln being the only school in the district to receive approaching expectations with English language arts. Another one of our indicators includes academic progress. So for academic progress, it's a little bit different. This is primarily for growth, the growth status of our report card, and it's to get our kids to move towards proficiency. So the state does look at if we are moving in the right direction. With that being said, we had Harrison, Lincoln, and McKinley both improve their indicator scores. With Harrison, ELA and math is approaching expectations. Lincoln and McKinley both are approaching expectations with math as well. Closing the achievement gap. For closing the achievement gap, they do look at whether there is adequate growth per student. Each of our students are classified as the below 25 percentiles, which are our do not pass kids, and then the other higher 75 percentile. Each kid is scored against themselves. So as they take the test every year, they're giving an indicator of how much they should grow if they continue on that same projection. So with that being said, we did have some growth with Harrison, Lincoln, and McKinley once again in their ELA and math, Lincoln being both subjects, and Lincoln being the only school that moved to the approaching expectations indicator. Our high school also receives a federal report card. They are different because they do have these 2 domains, graduation rate and strength of diploma. And so you can see for 2 years in a row, the high school has maintained their approaching expectations as they move towards their 85 to 100%. Our strength of diploma took a little bit of a dip this year, and that's because the state did a cap on the number of alternative diplomas that we were able to award. We're still at does not meet expectations, but we will work on the rigor of our diplomas to make sure that we get this indicator up.
So this is 23.
Can you repeat that again about the cap?
The state came in with alternative diplomas and put a cap at only 1% that we were allowed to distribute. So that's pretty much for our special ed students. Some of you may not know, but our English language proficiency achievement is also included in our report card. This was one of the places where we did see a green. We are meeting the expectations of our EL students at Washington. And also McKinley is approaching the expectations of our EL population. And just so you know that this also applies with our 9th to 12th grade students as well. And they're tracking our EL students and their measurement towards proficiency. Attendance for the district. We're currently at do not meet expectations. We had some ups and downs since COVID, and we did put some things in place last year, but we're still not where we need to be with attendance, and attendance is calculated a little bit different. We're asked to address students who are labeled chronic absentees, who have come to school, maybe missed 30 or 40 days. We're expected to come up with a plan to increase that. But then we also have students who are exemplary, and those students are expected to maintain their exemplary status. So this can be a little bit tricky when it comes to math, because I can be a student who only missed 1 day and be an exemplary, but maybe next year I get the flu and I miss 5 days. I've just now dropped down into a chronic absentee because just the way the scoring is done for each indicator. With that being said, we did have some greens and some yellows, so I do want to congratulate the buildings who are, like I said, working towards meeting proficiency, but we also know that we are also working very hard here locally with our principals and our teachers, and so I'm very proud of the people who have moved up with indicators. Okay. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Yes, Christine, I would ask a question. I was under the impression that we were going to go maybe just by one school through this packet.
Oh, you didn't get the slideshow?
No, do we have
Oh,
it?
It's in the board packet.
Oh, it is? Oh,
it
I'm
is there.
sorry. Okay. Yeah.
So what I did was the formal report
Oh,
that you
yes, I
saw,
see it.
I kind of concised it into tables so that you could have all the schools and years in one packet.
So out of these packages that we have from the federal, what schools are achieving from these packages?
Right now, all of our schools are labeled do not meet
Not meet
expectations.
Expectations, that's what I saw there. That's what the pinks.
Correct,
Okay, so these are all of them that do not meet the expectations?
correct.
Okay, and this is for the years of
23, 24.
23, 24, all of these?
Yeah, and I wanted just to remind everybody that, like I said, Senate bill allowed us to have a no grade for 22, 23, and 23, 24. So as we move forward with this school year, there will be some comparisons to last year with this year to work with the state to give us a score or a grade. But they've also moved to our GPS system, where anyone can have access to our scores, which we're mandated to post as far as the status of our iRead, SAT, iLearn scores.
Anybody else have questions?
Madam President,
Yes, Trustee Gomez.
Christina, thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to, I'm unclear on the report cards that start there. So there apparently was some growth at 2 schools, well, I guess really 4 technically. But it looks like consecutive growth at 2 schools. What are we looking at? I mean, what is this, what are the numbers representing? This doesn't tell me what
Okay,
they
so
represent.
that's a good question. Each indicator that I mentioned before, it receives a score and a rating based on whatever the indicator is. For example, if we're saying academic achievement, it will be performance. And then they look at the state's long-term goals and they calculate what the indicator score is. And then once you get, I'm gonna go back to that slide for a second. Once they do their formulation of our scores, they place us within these decimals, and then wherever we land in this point system then correlates with our approaching, meets, and exceeds. For example, this score range is specifically for academic achievement. So if you're looking at your academic achievement goal right now, and I'm just gonna reference one of them so you can look at it with me. For academic achievement, we had Lincoln being our only approaching expectations because they scored a 39.52. In order for them to be approaching, you had to score a 33.42. So, 48. So as the scores show up on the report card, we then make the correlation with how far they are from each domain. So you can see they are 4 or 5 points into approaching. Now we can make a better decision of what we need to do to gain the next 30 points. And they're all weighted differently. So it's like it's a math formula. I do have a cheat sheet that goes over the math formula they use for each one of these domains because they are different. But the overall scores do translate into an overall category that we see labeled here.
Okay, so it's not a score versus 100, it's to that math formula?
Correct.
Okay.
And a 33 in this domain does not mean it'll be the same in another one, maybe like academic progress.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Gutierrez, I just want to ask a question about the English language proficiency achievement, and I'm looking at Lincoln. So they don't have an English language?
That is a good question. In order for you to get a subgroup onto your data score, you have to have at least 20 students in that subgroup. So they don't have enough to be tracked.
Do they have any there?
They have, I believe, around 6, the last I heard, that are being serviced by the EL specialist at Washington.
So you said they had to have 20
Correct.
students?
If I can, the next question is in the academic progress slide. I've been on the board for 10 years. I don't believe we've ever gone through this. And so my question here is, what would average growth look like? Is there an average growth?
There is an average growth, but it's based on an individual tester. So every student, once they test, for example, in 3rd grade, I won't have the score because I have nothing to compare it to. Once I take the test in 3rd grade, they're now going to compare my 3rd grade scores with my 4th grade scores and check the growth and how far either I slipped or I moved up.
Same class, different year.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's cohort to cohort, it's
Got it.
student to student.
Got it. Okay.
Well, I
Yes.
must-
So go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I just say, well, I appreciate the growth, but you know, we have a lot of work to do.
Absolutely.
I do appreciate the growth, and I see some of the growth in the schools and I'm really proud of Lincoln.
Yes.
Really, I am. Even though they only have 6 students who can't take the English language, but
Right.
I'm just really proud of Lincoln. That means that they're working very hard. Not saying that the other schools are not, but Lincoln is kind of like my little baby, so I'm really proud of them. And I want them to continue to achieve to the highest that they possibly can.
Highest
I want all of them to, but
Absolutely.
Lincoln has always been dear to my heart.
Yes, and this is a very important report, and so we're trying to help our directors and principals this year be more intentional of how they can look at the report to make the gains they need, to be a little bit more strategic in their resources and their programs. So with that being said, it's a work in progress.
The last slide under attendance, I believe you mentioned that you have some initiatives or whatever underway. Can you explain what those are?
We granted the buildings permission to do some ceremonies for students who have achieved attendance and keeping a more of a progress monitoring out of attendance. We have class versus classes, so grade levels competing, where we want to have pizza parties possibly, and just recognize those kids or those classes who do have great attendance. But we left that to, those are the things we let loose for our principals to have some say in, and so they can plan incentives within their building with their budgets of how to celebrate the things that are happening.
And again, would this be under that other math formula, attendance?
Yes, so,
Or am I-
correct. So this measure, like I said, it measures model attendance, and this applies for kindergarten all the way up. And so what they do is they look at, like I said, your performance or your attendance from the year before to your current attendance, and they keep tracking, as well as the building's attendance.
So this is not 100%.
Correct. It makes it very hard for anyone to get 100% with the formula.
Yeah. Do you happen to have a breakdown of where you measure ELL students by each of these, well, maybe primarily at the elementary school?
Yes. So you guys right now have the paper copy to the actual reports, the formal ones. As the principals have access, they actually can click on the EL subdomain, and all the students that are in that report, their names populate. And so as they dig deeper into their data, they can then analyze which of our kids are showing growth towards proficiency, and they can then gear their interventions or their services towards those students. And that's kind of been Mrs. Medina's mission this year, to kind of identify kids who are not making growth and moving, and then having the EL specialists work with those students.
So, in the package that we have here from the federal accountability, is there data in there that compares from when they were, the students were doing good in academics and what have you not? Is this?
That's just for this, that's for 23, 24.
Right.
But we do have a dashboard that goes back to 21, 22. Before COVID, we don't have access to that, so there was the COVID year 20, but everything in between, it is there. But like I said, the state has been giving us some flexibility with us catching up with COVID and everything. So we do have those reports
Are
if
we
you want
still under
Dr.
the-
Bernay.
Under the whole harmless? Are we still under the whole harmless situation?
Correct, we're under the null grades for right now.
For the state?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Any more questions?
Madam President?
Yes.
Hi, Christine.
Hi.
With regards to 2022, 2023 graduation, this is the graduation rate for Central High School
Correct.
with 68, and then 2023, 2024, at this point in time is 58, correct?
At this point in time, are you saying it's 50% right now?
Is what states on the,
Right.
Well, it says the strength of the diploma. So we have graduation rate and then strength diploma. So yes, for last school year.
okay, so because you did mention from last diploma, or last graduation, that they removed something. What was that?
So I'm going to refer to Dr. Yanders. I do believe that it was maybe 2.5% they were able to have special ed, there was, or 5% before they made the cap of 1%. They just made that adjustment because they felt that there were too many of these alternative diplomas being given. And unfortunately for a school city, it's a large population. So it hindered our score, because then it also hindered our kids. But we had to be compliant.
So what happens is, Ms. Poe does a great job with getting our students graduating from the special ed department. And before, all students would qualify. If they were MO or MI, they qualify for the alternative diploma. Well, the state has gone back and said, well, they're only going to count 1% of the total graduation class can get the alternative diploma. Example, Central currently has, I think, 260-something seniors, right? So out of that 260 seniors, only 2.6 students are eligible for the alternative diploma. Well, you can't have 2.6 kids, so you rounded up 3 students. However, we have 9 to 10 students who are seniors, and had we not had that 1% cap in place, all 9 or 10 of those students would get the alternative diploma, which means that our diploma, our graduation rate will,
go up. But it will hit us because we are only allowed to give 3 of those students an alternative diploma. And then the other strength of diplomas is the types. So you got the Core 40, you got the Core 40 with honors, you got the technical Core 40, and then also the strength of the diploma, how many students graduated with CCRs, college and career readiness, dual credits, AP credits, all of those things. So those things all factor into the strength of the diploma.
Excuse me, just, you said something that just triggered a thought in my head. 3 could receive the alternative diploma.
Yes, sir.
What about the other 6?
They will get the general, which really doesn't count towards our.
Right, okay, I just, okay, I want to be clear. that They are getting a diploma, it's just not that type that we're required,
That
that we
will
can
count
max out.
towards our graduation rate. You know, the general
Right.
does not. Yes.
Right.
Yes,
Gotcha.
yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Ms. Gutierrez, I did have another question. As you have had a chance to look at this, the schools that have made progress, what would you attribute the progress to?
Speaking specifically with, well, there's a lot of things. I will say that Harrison was one of our buildings that started fully staffed. We're still struggling with filling teachers. They also had 2 instructional coaches there. They've had a consistent leader. Same thing with not just principal, but they've also had a consistent principal and assistant together, paired. So they've had teamwork and had time to figure out, how they are as leadership there. I would contest to Lincoln. She does have a AP who has a lot of knowledge with special education. And so she is very much involved in the data. They have a nice teamwork there. So I think a lot of it is the building up of the capacity of our leadership in those buildings.
And I was unaware that Lincoln had 2 coaches. I'm sorry,
Yes.
Harrison.
Harrison has,
Harrison.
remember we have the science of reading coaches that are specifically
yeah.
for literacy, and then we have the primary instructional coach.
Okay. Interesting, thank you.
Are there any more questions?
Madam President, I do have more questions, but not right now.
Yes. Pardon?
I do have more questions, but not right now.
Oh, okay then. Well,
Thank
thank you, Christine, for your presentation. So, I'm going to turn this over to you then, Dr. Bernay. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Bernay.
Good evening again, school board. We would like to go into the portion of our meeting, which is the pre-board meeting, to review agenda items. All of our board members have their packets ready or are accessing them digitally. We will start our Tuesday. We will meet at the Lincoln Elementary School on Tuesday, January 28th. So they will do their school level presentation. As typical, we will be followed by administrative reports from myself and our CFO. And if there's no other questions, we will move into all of the new business items. After the personnel report, if I can make, you do have a draft of the personnel report. There will be some other changes we need to edit prior to tomorrow's posting from our Office of Human Resources. And I believe they are in the classified section as well as in the resignation and termination section. Questions regarding the personnel report? We do have our personnel, our Human Resource Office representatives present.
Okay, anybody with questions for the personnel report right now?
Madam President.
Yes, trustee Gomez.
I do have a number of questions here. Page one, item number one.
Page one,
Yes, page one, item number one.
okay. Mm-hmm, we see that, yeah.
Okay. I was waiting for trustee Smith to find her packet. So, yep. Just a page one, number one.
Yeah, page one, number one.
Okay, and then that is for our recommendation for hire for our Director of SEL, Social Emotional Learning.
This position, when was this position posted and how was it posted?
This position was posted at the end of last year, meaning the 2024 school year. It was posted shortly after that grant. The ESSER funds grant deadline had expired. That position was posted along with the position as well for Director of English Learners.
So that was actually the end of the calendar year, correct?
Sorry, say the question again?
You said that it was the end of 2024 school year.
Correct.
It's actually at the end of the calendar year.
At the end of the calendar year.
Okay. And how was this posted? Is it just on our website, or did you reach out to other entities to?
So it was posted both internally and externally.
And externally, how is it posted?
Repeat the question.
How is it posted externally?
You're saying how was it posted?
Yes, is it just on our website, or do you have a group that you go to? Is there school administrators that, where is it posted, and how is it posted
We'll
externally?
ask our Director of Human Resource or representative come.
Can you get up to the mic, please?
It is, good evening, board. I'm sorry, I was about to say good morning. It is posted on Nimble, which is the platform that we use for all of our applications and human resources,
Okay,
both internally and externally.
okay, so you wouldn't use a search group like LinkedIn or Indeed? You don't go to that level, do you?
We have in the past for some, but not, in this particular case, no, we did not.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for the personnel report?
Yes, I have a question. Page 4, was there any, for this position here, 15, any paperwork for this position here?
Our office will verify the credentials for that position. They will verify that by first thing in the morning.
Okay, so once we get it, then we'll,
There may be a recommendation removed from the personnel report before it's posted.
okay. Are there any more questions from any of the boards?
Madam President,
Yes, Trustee Gomez.
trying to find it now. Oh, it is back on page 1, item number 5. This had been a struggle prior to you coming here, Dr. Bournet, and I believe there was a lot of back and forth about the credentials or qualifications for the person who would be assuming this role. I don't know if you would have an idea of what the discussions were prior to this job being posted and filled now. But I think there was issues about, does the person know first aid, CPR, AED? What do they have credentials to actually do, to offer training assistance to individuals with perhaps, a physical condition? Was that included in this job description? 'Cause unfortunately, I don't have this here. And unfortunately, I just got this, recently. I'd ask that in the future, as we have a work session, that we get all items before us 48 hours in advance, so we can look at them with more time in advance of a work session. So the question is, does this person have all those credentials that, because, again, prior to you coming here, I think the foundations was pretty adamant that if they were to fund us, that they were going to be having an expectation that this individual would be adequately trained to train others.
So if I understand your question, you're asking if the person who we're recommending for hire is qualified for the position?
I'm asking what those qualifications are.
So if Dr. McJunkins is able to speak or someone from our office regarding the fitness center coordinator qualifications?
Okay, well, we would have to, I'm sure the job description was submitted to the board quite some time ago prior to you guys approving it. I do not conduct the interviews for these particular positions. These are done by our athletic, director of athletics. And so he is responsible for making sure or ensuring that his candidates are highly qualified for the position. What I can do is get that information from him, and we will be glad to share that information with the board. I can take care of that tomorrow.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yes,
I'd like to,
Trustee
Madam
Smith?
President, may I make a statement?
Sure.
Okay, to my understanding, that particular item number 5, that particular program was turned back over to the schools. The foundation has nothing else to do with that. Am I correct? And it's under the Department of the Athletic Department.
Correct.
So the foundation no longer funds that. So to my understanding, last year, when we lost that funding, the athletic director was or is over that particular operation.
Yes,
Okay. And the school is paying that.
yes.
Not the foundation.
Correct.
So the application goes from the schools, come to the human resource, and we are the ones that hire or dismiss someone because we are in charge of that particular program now.
Absolutely. It's funded through in our school's budget.
Right.
And the director of athletics is responsible for the hiring and making the recommendation to human resources. We vet them in terms of background checks and credentials and so forth. But the actual directors are responsible for the interview process. They have a panel of interviewers, and they make the recommendation to HR.
I just wanted to make it clear that the foundation has nothing to do with this
Correct.
anymore. This
You're
is part of
absolutely correct.
EC Cardinal territory.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Madam President, I am aware of who funds this. It clearly states it in the last column. This is out of the educational fund. I was only referencing the foundations because it caused quite a stir, and that we were trying to work with them the best we could, and this is where we landed. Foundation still funds the equipment, though, in the fitness center, correct?
That's something that Ms. Simmons would have to answer.
Okay,
Okay, that's a budget
okay.
question.
Page 2, I just want to go to this listing on page 2. This is, I'm going to go to the postings for these positions. You answered the posting for item 1 on page 1. Can you address how the postings were made for these positions?
These postings were, the executive director of business operations was posted in 2024, soon after I came to the district. The buildings and grounds manager, Joe, can you remember when we first posted that one? Yes, it was, there, if you recall, there was a board meeting that we had, and one of the people in the audience mentioned a position that they had applied for. And that particular position was a director. And due to the cost of the position, we changed the position to a manager's position for buildings and grounds, which cost the district a little less money. And then in terms of the assistant superintendent position, Dr. Bournet gave me the directive to post that position internally recently. And that board members agreed.
Back to the executive director of business operations, you said 2024. Was that posted internally, externally, or both?
Both.
Buildings and grounds internally?
That was both.
Both. And so the only one that was posted internally was the assistant superintendent position.
Yes, and that was recent. Originally, it was executive director of instruction, I believe.
And Attorney Harris, we have a right to review personnel records, correct?
Yes, I do think there is a right to review personnel records. I mean, the question would be if there's a particular action that's triggering your request, but generally speaking, yes.
Given that there's, these are 3 internal candidates, I'd feel more comfortable having a look at records. Obviously, people who are coming from other school districts can't do that, but, I know we've had challenges in the past, but the board clearly has the right under our policy to call for a look at the personnel reports.
So what I would recommend, if that is a request, it wouldn't be distributed to the entire board necessarily, but I think the actual personnel file can be made available for review at the HR office, so
Right.
that you can go in,
Yeah.
obviously with an appointment, take a look at it, and that ensures privacy so that no
Exactly.
items are
I
taken
understand.
out, it's not copied, et cetera.
I
Yes.
understand. That's why I asked you the question.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Back to page 4. That single line item, there is no reason listed there. Is there a reason that field is left blank?
Pardon me?
Page 4,
As I understand it, in the past, the board approved for Mr. Franziski to stay in the, he was interim,
you could leave the names out.
okay.
Yeah. Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, that he was interim in the Director of Facilities position until filled. And now we have changed that position to a manager's position, which entails many of the responsibilities as the director, but answers to the, which would have been to the executive director of operations and business. And so this particular position, this person has to go back into a different position now that we're planning to fill the manager's position.
I don't want to get too deep into personnel issues here, but Attorney Harris, have you worked on this particular issue? I know there was an issue about an agreement that was struck between this individual and,
I don't have the detailed list that you all have
I
as
see.
board, I just have a general list, so I don't know who you're talking, I don't.
I could show to you.
Find out and let you know, but. I have not worked on anything involving that.
That's all I have.
Madam President,
Yes.
what is the name of the job posting platform?
Nimble,
Spell that out for me.
Nimble.
What I thought, okay. Thank you. Attorney Harris, could you repeat again the policy or procedure that Trustee Gomez was asking about requesting personnel files?
So I can't cite to the particular policy now, but I can find that for you if that's your question. But generally speaking, my understanding is that board members have the right to request to review personnel files prior to making a decision on a personnel action. So the intent isn't to just generally, out of curiosity, go and review personnel files, but rather because they're being asked to take action, to take a vote on something, they have the ability to do their due diligence, make reasonable inquiry, and review personnel files. Not obtain copies, right, because we want to maintain confidentiality, but calling the superintendent, letting him know, hey, I'd like to meet with HR, review the personnel files of these 3 individuals who are on the personnel report.
Okay. As an
That's
individual, or does we have to be
You all have that right. You don't all have to be there together. You may not have that question, right? So it's not required that you all do it, but you have the same right as any other board
Okay.
member, and you can go in and review just like anybody else who's requesting it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yes, Trustee Smith.
This is to Attorney Harris. So, with that being said, is that a practice through a lot of different corporations or businesses?
I wouldn't say that this is a practice necessarily. I think the issue is there is a request being made by the superintendent that this personnel report be approved in its entirety. And if a board member has a question about any item that's on that report, and that board member believes that they need to review certain documents, whether it's personnel records, budgetary documents to confirm where the money's coming from and that we have adequate resources to pay, part of your job as school board trustees is to do whatever homework you think is necessary to make an informed decision. So to that extent, I would say, yes, it's a normal practice. This doesn't come up that often. I agree with that. It's not something that normally is requested, but can it be? And if in your individual judgments you think you need it, you can request it.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, in terms, if a company hires someone and they go through that particular process, and after they've worked 6 or 7 months or a year there, and they want to go back into a person's personnel file, does that give them leeway to terminate them if something's not right? I mean,
I don't even think that is where this inquiry would head. I think the only purpose for making the inquiry would be so the trustee can make an informed decision. Outside of that, it's not for the purpose of making an actual personnel decision. It's just for the purpose of them casting their individual vote. Whatever's going to happen with the personnel report will be what the majority of you decide at the recommendation of the superintendent.
okay, well,
Because
thank you for that.
yeah.
But
It's different than the private setting Because here, you all act as a collective group.
Okay.
In a private setting, it's quite a bit different. So that's why.
That's basically what I'm trying
Okay,
to see.
okay,
But I'll talk to you
Okay.
more about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any more questions pertaining to the personnel report?
Madam President,
Yes, Trustee
I do have
Gomez.
another question, sorry.
Yes.
Actually, probably two. There was a discussion early on when Dr. Bournet assumed his role about the size of our district, and there would seem to be a general sentiment that the board felt that an assistant superintendent position was not required for a district of this size. And in that conversation, I think, arose a determination that we would, instead of having an assistant superintendent, we would have an executive director of instruction, I believe. That was then, I believe this position was originally listed as an instructional position. This position now, as it's listed, would, to my understanding, oversee, well, I'll let Dr. Burney answer the questions. What group or subgroup would this, I don't want to call it subgroup, what groups would this position oversee?
There is an agenda item later on under new business for the org chart. So we'll also have that discussion again later. But to answer your question in short, the assistant superintendent specifically will be required to supervise 5 departments as well as support all of our secondary schools.
And the other question I have is, I find it interesting that we've made our job postings available on Nimble, which I appreciate, and that we posted them internally. The issue I have with this position is that, I heard Dr. McJunkins correctly, was only posted internally.
Correct.
And yet this is the person who is sitting basically right next to the superintendent and who is, the board went through an extensive search process to find a superintendent, and yet we're limiting the pool of candidates here internally. I do have an issue with that, particularly when lesser positions are outsourced to a group like Nimble.
Okay.
Are you, is that a question for me, or?
No, it's a
No,
comment
that's just
to
a
me.
statement. Yeah, that's
Yep.
all, he's making a statement. Okay, is there any more questions?
Well, maybe I could ask Dr. Bournet the reasoning for just an internal posting.
Okay,
Sir, what was your question?
Why was this job only posted internally?
So as a result of the reorganization chart, which we will be discussing later on new business, we had conducted several interviews for the executive director of instructional services. That candidate that we're recommending would have been in that same role, and I had a desire to have someone who's officially second in command, which would be the assistant superintendent, someone who is by the state of Indiana able to perform duties that it requires in a superintendent or an assistant superintendent. And so that is why I posted the position internally and not externally.
Could you repeat that superintendent, assistant superintendent comment again?
So there are some items of the state of Indiana requires a superintendent and/or his designee. That person who we're recommending also has a superintendent cert and is able to do those functions as well.
Okay. And I do recall under board training that the board is allowed to conduct interviews for assistant superintendent as well. That's a statement. I don't have a question. Thank you.
thank you. We'll move on now. Next, order, Dr. Bonet.
The next item, 6.02, will be the approval of a first reading for the credit card or the use of the credit card. Questions regarding that item?
Any questions from the board?
I'd just like to take a moment just to really go over this particular item. I don't have any questions right now, but we're just going over our agenda.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll ask questions later about this
Okay.
after the meeting, you know, or, I mean, after the meeting, but before we have our actual
Your
board
meeting.
meeting.
Okay. Okay.
Madam President?
Yes,
I'll
Trustee
just
Gomez.
make a statement as the Chair of the Policy Committee. We've had a number of meetings about this particular item, and it's gone through first reading on at least one previous occasion. It was not introduced as a second reading, a subsequent meeting, which then, according to our policy, takes it back to our first reading. So this is at least the second, if not third time, we've had this policy in front of us for approval on first reading. In short, the intent, and Trustee Smith was on the policy committee with me. The meetings we had were to go over the use of the credit card and any challenges that were found in previous audits, that they would be addressed, and I think Attorney Harris could probably weigh in on the rest. Attorney Harris, can you share the highlight of the policy?
Yeah, I think the policy was, we've had a credit card policy for some time, and there have been changes along the way, and obviously this came back up here recently, and I think there was a common desire of the entire board to make sure that the policy clearly outlined what you can do and what you can't do with the credit card. I think the administrative guidelines that are incorporated in the policy itself help to outline. You'll see that starting on page, hold on, let me see. Yeah, the bottom of page 1, but really 2 and 3. And it outlines more particulars in terms of what the specific requirements are. But the idea is that the card is intended to be for business-related expenses only, and those purchases that you would incur throughout the course of your travels when you get professional development. That's the intention. There were some concerns that were expressed by the CFO in terms of making sure that the credit cards were returned in a timely manner and the receipts were kept. So the language of the policy incorporates all that to address all the concerns that everyone kind of expressed to the policy committee, and that's what's included in this particular version of the policy.
Attorney Harris, thank you. And I would just add that both Dr. Bournet and the CFO were present at these meetings to provide their input.
Yes, this isn't one of the policies where there's a general idea and then we draft, based upon the ideas that we heard. This was really an interactive process where CFO, superintendent, everybody was involved in the actual drafting.
Not satisfied with this. Because it's still not stating what actually it should state. And maybe I'm just making more out of this than what it is, but it is what it is. Black and white is black and white. So now, personally, the only thing I see wrong with this is I was trying to go through it, and I kept asking, saying, I have no problem with the credit card. My problem is I wanted to state that the card should only be issued when you are going to a session, a work session, or whatever. The card should not be held personally in a board member's personal, in their personal wallet. This card is the school's. It is governed by the district. So when you're getting ready to go on a session, that's when you should have the credit card in your hand, not just carrying the school credit card around. That was my only issue. And I seem to be that we can't seem to get that particular part correct. So I'm still not satisfied with this, and I'm not going to be satisfied with this, and maybe it's just me. The administrative part, I understand the superintendent, but the board, I'm saying, should not have the school's personal credit card in their possession at all times. That's all I wanted to say. Only for when you're going for different sessions. That's all I'm asking. It is so simple.
Trustee Harris, I'm sorry, Attorney Harris, I believe it's addressed in paragraph D.
Yes, so the way the policy currently reads, the card does remain securely with the CFO, and she releases it whenever it's deemed appropriate. In your example, it's when you have a work session or whatever the circumstances are. But the way it reads now, it allows the CFO to determine when that's going to be released based upon her knowledge of what you all are attending. It sounds like what you're asking for is for additional instruction to the CFO, not necessarily to the board member, and that wasn't necessarily the intent. But because it's written the way it is, if we added the language you were talking about, it would really instruct the CFO more than it would you all as individual board members, because the CFO is who's going to
Okay.
possess the card. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think it adequately addresses the concerns of board members having cards and them not being under adequate control. And the CFO had that concern because ultimately she's accountable from a financial point of view to report all these things. And if
Correct.
she can't get receipts and can't get the card back, then it becomes an issue. So with her input, it reads the way it reads now, and she at least feels as though
Okay.
this covers the concern and she can control it this way.
So she did have input in this?
She did.
Okay.
Okay, so her input is in which item here, C?
So yes, it's in item C. And overall, though, I mean, she's seen the entire
Oh,
thing, not
entire-
just.
Not
We
just.
didn't ask, do you have a comment? Please send us your comment, and then we incorporated it. She reviewed the entire thing and had the ability to comment on the entire
Okay.
policy, and still has that ability if between now and our regular board meeting, she has some comment. I think that's still possible.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
Oh, yes, Trustee Rodriguez.
Attorney Harris, so maybe I may be looking at an older, this must be an older one. But I think I sort of understand where Trustee Smith is referring to, where it states, members of the school board shall retain possession of their individual credit cards.
What item you look reading?
This is code PO 6423, but I may be looking at an older one, because I did send this to the chairman of the policy, Trustee Gomez, so I believe there may be an updated version to this.
Trustee Gomez, do you want to speak to that?
There's a draft. If you look at the draft,
Okay,
Attorney Snow has outlined the draft. He sent the entire board an email identifying that the policy has been revised with input from Dr. Bornay, CFO Simmons, and Trustee Smith and myself to reflect the input of everybody on this. As I said, this is the third time that this has gone through just the first reading. So what you're reading,
yeah, Trustee Gomez, I do apologize, I do see the
Thank you.
updated draft, and it has been removed, and I do appreciate it, thank you.
thank you.
Oh, yes, there's, any more questions? Dr. Bonet, you.
Alrighty, thank you. Item 6.03 is the approval to accept the Indiana Department of Education Early Literacy Achievement Grant. Ms. Gutierrez is here if there's any questions regarding that grant.
Okay, just really quickly, the Early Literacy Achievement Grant, it's time to go home, guys, is a reward that our schools and teachers get for improving students' foundational reading skills based off of our results from the iRead 3. So this year, we received $21,149.29. And so we were going to use the same formula we did last year to make sure that teachers who had a performance that maintained or improved the iRead 3 scores get a piece of that grant.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question, Ms. Gutierrez. So this is different from like the TAG grant, where you'd have to be effective or highly effective to receive this.
Correct. So what the state did was they allocated $10 million to divvy up among the schools in the state of Indiana. And of course, like I said, use their performance rate to receive funding to reward teachers. Because remember, we do have the requirement of improving our iRead scores to 100% in a couple years.
So the cash stipends,
Correct. They'll receive cash stipends. I'm working with payroll right now, where this is for, right now, primarily 2 buildings that had good data. For anyone that had significant support in the instruction of the students, that could be a para as well as a teacher.
and is it limited to teachers, paras, and instructional coaches?
Correct. And there are some stipulations. The employee must still be employed by School City. So I knew we had some retirees and other people. They are not eligible for the payout.
Thank you.
What were the 2 schools? You said there were 2 buildings?
Yes, we had 2 buildings. We had Lincoln, and, oh, it's losing me now. I don't want to say Harrison.
McKinley?
Yes, Lincoln and McKinley.
Kinley, okay.
I'm sorry, I take that back. It was Lincoln and Washington, because Washington maintained,
Oh, Washington?
Yes.
Not Lincoln? I mean, not McKinley?
not McKinley.
Okay, thank you.
But we did our due diligence to make sure that if we had some outliers of teachers in those buildings who maintained or improved their scores, they were also put in for, to receive a reward. Unfortunately, administrators or principals and central office staff cannot receive any of the funding.
Understood, and just so I'm clear, the cash stipends are not, they're basically bonuses, correct? They're not, they're after the fact.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct. They give us the 21,000, and we still, out of that funding, take out their FICA and all those things so that
Okay.
it covers the cost, and then we give them a bonus.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Gutierrez?
Okay, thank you.
Justice Smith, you have a question? Thank you. Item 6.04 is the approval of the municipal advisory services from Cinder and Dalton. Cinder and Dalton, and our CFO's absent. Cinder and Dalton
Yeah.
is the consultant group that works with us when we apply for bonds. That is a 1-year contract, and it is a renewal. Questions? Oh, I'm sorry. You have specific questions?
No, I just said,
Yes, if you have some very detailed questions, obviously Ms. Simmons will be able to answer.
Yeah, because he's not going to come in and do a presentation, or he
No.
normally comes in, so he does, we just renewing the contract?
Yes.
Okay.
So for the purpose of the length of the agenda items, we did tell him he did not have to present. Did the board want him to still present?
I think it'd be advantageous since we have a new school board member.
Excuse me a minute, trustee Gomez, you want to speak? Did you want to have something to say?
Oh, I'm
Trustee-
talking to Dr. Bournet. Yes, I think it'd be advantageous if we have the individual, Mr. Dalton come and speak to us, particularly as we have a new school board member.
Madam President?
Yes, Rodriguez, trustee
And
Rodriguez.
I agree with trustee Gomez that relates to the actual service of Cinder and Dalton. But in terms of the contract, we have worked with Cinder and Dalton for many, many years with regards to assisting us in our forecast for the budget.
Yes.
So I'll leave that to the board.
Yes, this says renewal.
I think prior to it was Cinder and Cinder. I guess they may have changed their name, or a brother may have branched off, but now it's called Cinder and Dalton, but it's the same company.
So clarification, presentation or not?
I don't need a presentation. I think Trustee Gomez brought Trustee Taylor, if she wants to see the
Yes.
presentation of the contract. Because obviously, this is not the presentation for the budget.
That is correct. It's not
Right.
a
So
bond
if you want to
presentation, it's
see
just the
that.
contract.
Right, and you need the contract too, because there's several contracts that we got to give you.
So this is just a proposal?
It's just a renewal. You don't have the contract. No, we'll get you a copy of,
No, there should be,
thought
that
it's
is,
in-
the
I thought that's
contract
what we're
is
looking at.
attached.
Yeah, this is
Oh,
the
this is-
contract.
is
It
attached
is
to it?
still a
I'm sorry.
renewal contract, though,
But it's
meaning
renewal.
this same contract, or very similar to it, existed last year.
Okay.
And this is another contract that's basically being renewed. There may be an adjustment of their rates, from year to year.
Okay.
I can't speak to that specifically, but that would be the only type of change. If for some reason, the superintendent or the CFO thought that the scope of work needed to be tweaked a little to take something out or add something, that would happen, but generally speaking, it's the same contract.
Yeah.
That gets renewed.
Dr. Bornay?
Yes.
I did possibly want to add something to the services, and that's in relations to the bond allocation areas throughout the city of East Chicago, and how that would affect our schools in terms of the dollars that we get from those bonds that the cities create.
So if it's not currently in his scope of services, we will make an addition then.
Thanks.
Hopefully without added cost.
Yes. Any other questions for item 6.04?
You should be okay?
Yeah, I'll be
Okay.
fine reviewing this on my own.
Okay.
The next item, 6.05, is approval for the increase of the mileage rate for 2025. The new rate is 70 cents. It's increased by 3 cents. The board does need to take action on that for us to reimburse employees for mileage. It went from 67 cents to 70 cents. Questions for that before we move on to 6.07?
And Dr. Bornay, those are mileage rates that's mandated by the federal government, correct?
I'm sorry, Trustee Rodriguez, could you repeat?
Those were mileage rates that were mandated by the federal government.
Correct. So where an employee is reimbursed for mileage, say for example, for traveling to professional development to Indianapolis, legally, or we are allowed to reimburse them now 70 cents per mile round trip. Okay. Our Director of Special Education is not available to discuss item 6.07, which is
Oh, the 6.06?
the Part B 611 grant.
Wait a minute, we didn't go to 6.06.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did skip over.
Yeah.
Thank you. 6.06 is the approval to dispose of gas stoves, electric stoves, and electric washers. These items were purchased with grant dollars, and in order for us to dispose of them, they must be board approved. Questions regarding item 6.06?
Dr. Bornay, since the stoves, electric stoves and electric washers, how would they be disposed of? And is there any type of reimbursement from the metals in these items?
If I could add to that, that's a very good question, because your record should show what you did with whatever it is you're throwing out.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, sometimes there's arrangements made for people to come and get it, and that's basically their fee. Like, if they scrap it, then they get the benefit of scrapping it, but you didn't have to pay a mover or any staff to injure their back or anything like that. So if she could elaborate on the arrangement, that would be helpful for you all.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We will follow up with that information.
Dr. Bournet?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd also add to trustee Rodriguez's comment that we actually had an employee who was disposing of school property that would be, for many of us, junk, but they were actually collecting cash for that, and that employee was terminated, so he has a valid question.
And now 6.07 is the Part B, 611 grant. That is a special ed grant. I believe Dr. Yanders might be able to fill in, but she stepped out.
Special ed grant, you said.
The amount is $1,037,969. Those items, or that allocation is to be used for special ed staffing, specifically teachers and paraprofessionals. I've already answered the question, Dr. Yanders.
Okay. Okay, this is Tammy Poll, though, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Questions regarding Part B, 611?
Dr. Bournet, I'm sorry, I don't have my packet in front of me. Can you address what this is for? I can't recall the purpose of this grant.
I'm sorry,
Just
say your
Tammy
question
Poll.
again.
The purpose of the grant, I'm sorry.
Oh. The purpose of the Part B 611 is obviously a grant that is specifically used for other special ed initiatives. Ms. Pohl can probably speak specifically to other initiatives that are funded, but a lot of those initiatives fall under the attempt to execute services to be compliant with their IEPs.
Thank you.
Questions regarding item 6.07?
no, we on 8.
Oh, no, I said before we move to.
Oh,
8.
I'm sorry.
Any other questions regarding it? 6.08 is approval to use Central High School parking lot. That is a request from the East Chicago's Central High School Alumni Association. Annually, they use that parking lot for their alumni weekend. They're requesting to do the same this school year or this summer. Questions regarding item 6.08?
Dr. Bournet? Prior to coming here, there was a review of the parking lot afterwards, and there was liquor bottles found in the garbage cans. I would ask that the approval be contingent on a year-to-year basis on the, somebody monitoring this. As you know, the liquor is not allowed on school grounds, and so they were clearly violating this, in which should have been a good celebration. Luckily, there was no outburst or anything like that, but there was a number of liquor bottles found in garbage cans afterwards.
So that did happen while I was actually in office. I did
Oh,
personally
sorry.
address that with Ms. Darden, the president, during that time when we were discussing the event, the incident.
Good, thank you.
Item 6.09 is the approval of the MOU for Jelani Educational Services. This is also in our special education department. Specifically, this is a contract extension of the contractor we have for a school psychologist. So it's being extended to the end of the school year to May. Questions regarding 6.09?
Dr. Bournet, I recall under Dr. Mitchell's leadership that he had converted, I believe, somebody from a contract position to a full-time position. Are you aware of that?
What was the source of that?
It was under Dr. Mitchell's time here as the interim superintendent. He had converted an individual from a contract status to an employment status. Maybe if you could follow up with him. I remember him saying that it was cheaper for us to bring this individual over as a full-time employee. Just a thought, if we're looking or have a need for this position, maybe you could save money if we make them a full-time employee.
We do have 3 total school psychologists on staff. 2 are full-time employees and 1 is a contract.
Contract.
Okay. Thanks.
Item 6.10, an MOU with Tobacco Lake County. That is one of our drug prevention efforts. And specifically, this MOU is for McKinley Elementary, and it is to work with 6th graders, working with them on what is anti-tobacco and anti-vaping. This is the first partnership with this group. We will be evaluating it so we can extend this program to all of our elementary schools.
Yes, okay, that's my question, because, so we're starting with McKinley first.
Yes.
So, well, are they smoking up at the school then?
So this is preventative. So the goal is to
Not to have them doing it then,
educate
huh?
our students while they're in elementary, so they
Yes.
do not pick up the habit of smoking or vaping.
Okay,
We do not have any incidents recorded so far of
Okay, thank-
elementary.
well, thank God. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Dr. Fournier, along with this tobacco seminar or whatever, then in the future, we should think about narcotics, period.
Yes,
The gummies,
yes.
educate our kids that they're not from Albanese, they're gummies, So,
Yes.
along with that, just a suggestion. in the future.
Absolutely. We will, this year, we have actually expanded a lot of what we do in terms of drug prevention. And we did have special partners come in to talk with our our middle and our high school regarding gummies and those levels of narcotics. This is expanding that effort.
Dr. Bournet,
Yes.
while we're on the subject, maybe somewhat related to this, I know Attorney Harris had been working on the tobacco settlement. Do you happen to know if this is part of that, and if not, where is that other settlement at?
It's not part of it, but it's funny you mentioned that because I don't remember if it was this morning or yesterday, I sent an email to Leela and asked that she provide you all with an update on settlement proceeds to date. There's another document that is ready for your signature because we have another check that's ready, a settlement check ready. So I believe she's going to be working on preparing a spreadsheet on the dollars received total, because they trickle in over time. And when they come in, I get the appropriate signatures, but this isn't related to that, but you are ready for an update on that, and yes, we do have another settlement check,
Great.
so.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I want to ask a question. Because we had one before, is this the same one we're speaking about, or this is another one?
So this agenda item that with the MOU doesn't have anything to do with the lawsuit that we've got. We're involved in a class action lawsuit
Yes.
against several e-cigarette manufacturers.
Right.
And as we settle with each one of the e-cigarette manufacturers or partners of the manufacturers, they issue a check to us and the other members of the class. So they trickle in over time because there's a lot of defendants.
Yeah,
And yeah, we've had more than one settlement check in the past. I don't remember exactly offhand how many we've had, but we've had several, and now we've got another one that's coming in too.
well, this one here, is this the only school district, is this only just one entity, us, or are there other?
No, there are other school districts
well,
that
check-
have also joined this class action lawsuit that
Oh.
are receiving settlements, and the way, not to get too far off track, but the way those settlement amounts work is based upon your student population, is your value in the case, right? So if you got a real big school, you get
Yeah.
a much bigger check than if you're a smaller school district, you get a
Yeah,
little
you
check,
get the
right?
check,
So
okay.
that's basically how it works.
Well, that's why I asked, was it more schools, or was it just only us?
No, there's
So
other
it's some more
schools, and the larger population schools are Class A litigants, you know,
Yes.
and it goes from there, but yeah.
Okay, so, but you said that Leela would give us an update on that, right?
Yeah, I asked her to prepare a spreadsheet and give you a rundown of what you've received to date. There's no way for us to know what is coming because it's just settlement of litigation, but we do know exactly how much we've received, and she can let you know that.
Okay, all right.
We'll take it.
Other questions for item 6.10? Item 6.11, approval of leadership retreat at IB Tech. So this actually is my agenda item. We will be taking all of our principals as well as our directors and some other coordinators to participate in the retreat at IB Tech East Chicago campus. It's a day and a half. It is designed around several activities. One of the main activities will be a data analysis. So just like the board today had a presentation on federal report card, our leadership team will also be reviewing data at the district level as well as at the building or school level. We are working with both everyone on the instructional side of the house as well as the operational side of the house, in addition with our principals. Questions regarding the leadership retreat?
Yes, Dr. Bonet, is this a cost?
Yes, so the cost to use the space at IB Tech is gratis. The only cost will be for food which is breakfast and lunch for those 2 days.
But we can get a cost.
It will not exceed 500. We'll be using K-12 Elliott.
Oh, yeah? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Burnett?
Yes.
Given that you're having the leadership team participating in it, this brings to mind the Maisie contract and the remainder of their services. Would you consider including them in this so that these individuals are all trained?
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
Yeah, the Maisie contract, this brings to mind the Maisie contract. And the reason it brings to mind that.
Oh,
is
you're
that you have
talking about
Yeah,
the contractor? No,
the contractor, yeah.
No, he won't need to. I'll be facilitating the entire leadership retreat.
Okay. Where, and I'm sorry, this is off the agenda item, but where are we at with that Maisie contract?
I will give the board an
that'd
update
be
with
great.
Mazzy with where we are with Mazzy as part of my
Okay,
update.
thank you.
That's, what's his name? What's,
Mr. Williams?
no, Nathan, that's his name, Nathan, yeah, okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay, leadership retreat. Next item is item 6.12, the approval of the 2025 board meeting schedule. I believe it is the will of the board to go back to 2 meetings a month, effective with the February meeting, and you should have that schedule in your packet.
Oh, what number is this?
6.12.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I wrote on the wrong line.
Dr. Burnett, I recall you had wanted us to only meet once a month.
Correct. So for the purpose of this board meeting, we will be meeting with, or I'll be working closely with the president to craft out the agenda items, which we'll be discussing. So there will be a time on each meeting for discussion. I think it is worthwhile to have sort of what we're doing now, the pre-board meeting, which allows us to ask questions about board items and agenda items, as well as when it's time to conduct business of the board and items need to be voted on. So with the recommendation to move back to 2 meetings a month, these work sessions such as this will be folded into that, one of those 2 meetings.
Okay, that was the purpose of the question. Thank you very much.
Okay, board meetings. Item 6.13, the Revolutionary Ed Strategic Planning Proposal. This is the presentation we heard at one of our previous work sessions. Any questions regarding 6.13?
Dr. Bonet, I think I've voiced my opinion on this before, and the more I think about it, the more I'm, firmly on the side that I think that a proposal is fine for a strategic plan. And just for the record, the strategic plan would be a living document, correct? The strategic plan would be a living document, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so there really is no deadline or rush to get this done. And I do fall on the side that I would like to see more options presented to the board. I've reached out to both superintendents and board members from neighboring districts, and they've ranged from Indiana School Board Association to the Superintendent Search Committee, and Munster, I know, had gone to Hanover, somebody or another, I can't recall. But whether you're an elected board or appointed board, there seems to be a consensus that they've used and been happy with, including Gary, the services of the Indiana School Board Association, who are experts at Indiana academic standards and so on. They've done, as I said, districts such as Gary and Lake Ridge. I would really like to see and hear other options, and I'm not saying that I would be for or against this one, but I really would like to have a comparative proposals so I can measure which one I feel and maybe the board feels would be the best for us to move forward with. The price range for this, as I recall, was in the $50,000 range. I've heard as low as $5,000 from one district to $15,000, a significant savings for the school district. So at this point in time, I just want to make it clear that I have neither a bias for or against this group, but I really don't feel comfortable just addressing one proposal.
Any more comments? Dr. Bonet?
I have one.
Okay,
Did
thank
you
you.
want to
Ms.
go
Harris.
first?
No.
Okay, so that agenda item, just so the board members are clear, is a proposal. If you all were to go forward with approving this proposal or another proposal, we still need to approve a contract. This document is just a proposal, and it would be your acceptance of the proposal. That would be subject to negotiating the terms of a contract that spells out exactly what they'll do, the adequacy of their staff, how we terminate the agreement. All those normal provisions are not included in the document you see. It's just a proposal of the services they'll provide and at what price. So
And you would be drawing up that contract,
I would
right?
draw up the contract, but just so you know, this is a two-step process. You all
Yes.
accept a proposal, and that gives me the instruction to work with them to draft the contract, and then it will come back before you again for approval.
Okay, Ms. Harris, do you know when the last time there was a strategic plan for the East Chicago School District?
I know the last time there was talk about a strategic plan. I don't know the last time there was actually a strategic plan.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the last plan was up under Harding. How long has that been? 2009. Yeah, and we've not had anything in place since then, right? And I understand what Trustee Gomez is speaking of, but I think that the urgentness of this is very important. We do have something from Dr. Balch, which Mr. Gomez did highly recommend Dr. Balch, but so Dr. Bonet do have something in comparison, if he would like to look at it. These other entities that you're speaking of, why they chose whoever they chose, I have no idea. They may have the other reasons as why this may be somebody who they've been going, and then they're not failing schools, I don't think either. When I looked them up, some of these schools that use some of these people, they are moving forward. So I would like to move forward, and we do have something to compare with. I don't think that we need to delay any more time with a plan that has not been put in place since 2009.
Dr. Bonet, Gary is is a failing school district, so, not all these schools are failing. that I mentioned, and I've neglected to mention, there's another group, and I'm sorry, I can't recall the name of them right now, but they are headed by two former East Chicago administrators, Kim Bradley and Erica Glenn. And I know you've met with them, Dr. Bornay, early on when you first got here. And they also offer services of a strategic plan as well. Given that both of them were principals at our schools, they know our community. I think it'd be highly advantageous to have two individuals who know our district and who know our community to lead a strategic plan. I don't think there's a rush for this. If I'm not mistaken, if we get this in place by August, and take another week to look at alternative proposals, I think we'd be better off for it. It's not, to me, a matter of urgency. It's a matter of doing it right.
Who did the last strategic plan for our school district? The superintendent did himself? Okay.
Who was that? And that was, I had the list. Oh, what I do? with
I
the
believe that was Mr. Harding,
list? And then we had,
staff, right?
what I do with that list? Last, just,
If I could just make note that I know one superintendent told me they led the strategic plan on behalf of their district.
say what, just,
One superintendent I spoke with led the strategic plan in their district.
oh man, what I do with that list?
Any other comments for 6.13? Six point 1.4 is approval of administrative organizational chart. There's a revised copy passing out. This is another iteration of the organizational chart, which was shared, I believe, at our last work session.
Yes.
Questions regarding 6.14?
I just
will-
want, I do have a question.
Yes.
With regards to the assistant superintendent, she'll be handling all the duties of the secondary educational instructor or director that we had in the past, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Oh, what did you say, Joel?
You want to repeat that?
Yeah, what, I'm sorry.
So, as we said earlier, the assistant superintendent will be responsible for the instructional side of the house, those 5 departments: English learners, SEL, special education, school improvement, and elementary curriculum. But she will also be responsible for providing oversight, support, and supervision to our secondary schools, Block and Central.
And these are all the jobs listed under the assistant superintendent, right?
That is correct.
All these jobs? Okay. I'm sorry, would you finish, Rodriguez? Oh,
Thank you.
okay. Now, my question, Dr. Bonet, is the principal's salaries. And we'd like to know that.
Yes, so I will submit to the board a revised flow chart that includes principal salaries as well as any other coordinator or director's position that is absent.
Mm-hmm. And then, what kind of contract will these individuals have? 1-year contract?
So any new employee would have a 2-year contract. Any existing employee would have a 1-year contract,
So
unless that's different. So,
we don't have anybody new?
no, the director of SEL would be a new person, but it is still a grant-funded contract. And
Okay.
it clearly says that on the job description.
If I could just speak to that real quick, your same question, and Dr. Bornay, correct me if I'm wrong. This is the first step in this whole process, you would also be presenting the board with job descriptions and then ultimately the contracts associated once individuals are selected. But for now, you want to get their approval on just the flow chart. To
Correct.
make sure that you can develop these positions and fill them, right?
Right.
So if there's something you want to see addressed, it can be addressed in a job description in particular, or, whatever else it might be. That's why I bring it up.
Right, because I know that we prove these jobs, but we never have the contracts or anything in front of us before they get approved. So
Yeah, for
that's why
some
I'm
reason.
asking,
Yeah,
how
that-
long
you're
is the
right.
contract? I had to put the salary down here, so we do have that.
Yeah, unfortunately, there was not a practice in the past with prior superintendents bringing those contracts to the board. It was done administratively, and the board didn't know about it. I didn't either. I didn't see them. So if they had a question about it, I couldn't tell them if this person had a one-year contract, two-year contract, or what the status of it is, because it was kind of done separately, so.
Thank you.
Let's see, well, this doesn't have anything to do, well, it does as far as monies is concerned, but we are going to have an audit, a forensic independent audit.
Correct. Earlier, when I started with the school city, I had expressed my desire to have a forensic audit. We probably got distracted as the year came on board, and I still would like to have a forensic audit. It is still it's not untimely to still have it. And that would also support or be one layer of evidence that I'm using as we do an overall evaluation of the school city and programming and funding.
Dr. Bernay, to that point, it would seem to me that you'd want to do the audit before you set salaries, so that you do know where we're at. I had asked about having a separate reporting position, which would be the director of secondary education, who would focus solely on middle and high schools. I find this a lot for one individual to cover 5 different departments, who knows how many employees and how many students that are being serviced under this position. But given the history, the data that we looked at earlier at our high school, I think we need more attention than less. And this seems like giving somebody a part-time job to oversee what would many districts be a full-time position, and which at one time was a full-time position here. I think that we're better off having a director of secondary education as we do have a director of elementary education. I don't feel the focus can be where it is solely focused on improving the scores at our middle and high schools. I'm not comfortable with this at all. And just as a side note, in absence of the superintendent, then who is in charge under this flow chart?
Are you asking based on this flow chart?
Based on this flow
Yeah,
chart?
so the flow chart goes to the assistant superintendent, would be the next in command.
Okay. Because I know we've wavered between the CFO and another individual. I just want to be clear that maybe the chart needs to be revised so that it shows a direct sequence in the absence of the superintendent. But again, I think the board had been very clear before that we wanted executive director titles. And I know I was clear that I want a director of secondary education. I just don't see, we've saved money in some areas, and yet, academically, Dr. Joe used to call the high school the flagship of the district. We're not doing well there. I think we need a lot of attention there, and I don't see it on this flow chart.
Any more questions? Maybe Trustee Taylor might have some questions.
No, I'm just trying to digest what Trustee Gomez was saying, but I'm thinking that's where the strategic plan will come into place, correct?
Yes. And so, and keep in mind, as we are reorganizing for efficiency and flow, that that person, once again, has two schools. The scope of the school, obviously the enrollment is important, but in terms of working closely with those two leaders as part of the team. So it's the assistant superintendent and the entire instructional services team who's going to be working with that's leadership, as well as lending their work to the elementary.
I guess I'm basing my decision or my comments on the outcomes that we received when we had a full-time secondary director. There was a marked improvement from, year to year with somebody who was focused solely at those two buildings.
Oh,
Oh, you have a question?
no, Rodriguez, you got a question? Oh, okay. No, I don't have anything.
Okay. And once again, I will follow up with the revised flow chart for the board based on that feedback. Item 6.15 is approval of the Gary Historical and Cultural Society to make use of our facility at Central High School, specifically the band room. This will be a facility use agreement. They solely need a place to practice, and they would like to use our band room to practice based on the size, being able to accommodate, I believe, their 35-member orchestra. Questions regarding this facility use agreement or facility use proposal?
I guess my question would be, where does our band fit in this, this approval?
Could you repeat your question?
Yeah, where does our band fit in?
So this is an adult band, an adult orchestra. So they will be performing for our students as part of their thank you for the use of our facility. So we will have the orchestra be doing a performance in our auditorium.
The reason I'm bringing that up is that I did a grant many, many years ago when I was on the foundations, where I took a group of elementary kids to go see the Northwest Indiana Symphony. The kids actually had a chance to go backstage, play some of the instruments. The orchestra was there to greet and meet the kids. If we could do something that's a little more interactive with our students, I think that'd be a great addition to this group coming to perform in front of our kids.
And I'll follow up with the Gary Historical and Cultural Society.
Thank you.
Am I reading this correctly? Our band teacher, Mr. Murphy, he is a part of the symphony?
That is correct.
That's awesome. Okay. We could leverage
Yes.
relationships there.
Any questions for 6.15? 6.16 is the approval for Sylvan Learning. This is for St. Stanislaus. This is their request to use, if the board recalls, the way title funds work, that a school, private or charter, parochial, who has a portion of our students are entitled to those Title I funds. In order for them to access those funds, they must request specifically how they're going to use them, and that is this request. So they're requesting use of Title I funds to fund their tutoring program, and that will be manifest itself in the form of salaries for their staff. Questions regarding the St. Stanislaus Sylvan Learning tutoring request?
Dr. Bornay, when we had Sylvan Learning come in front of the board to do tutoring, I asked a pointed question to a representative from Sylvan, and I asked them for data to show us where they had seen or made improvements with school districts, because to my knowledge, If I recall correctly, I asked the question, how many public school districts they do work with in Lake County, and they said there were none. So I asked them to provide me some data. I don't know if you ever received anything from them, but I know this is not the school district, but it is Sylvan Learning. So I'm going to ask if you could follow up with them again to provide me with the data that I had requested.
Yeah, so we actually did, they did meet that request. We shared that Sylvan data that they shared with us with the board earlier this school year through one of my updates. But we will reshare that information with you based on your request.
Thank you.
But that's our school, Silver Learning, not St. Stan's data.
The
You
data
talking
that
about
I
the data?
share?
Yeah, I know you shared
Yeah,
the data already.
Yeah, so the data, so the board has two pieces of data.
Right.
They have how our students have performed with Sylvan since that ended in December.
Right.
That was shared most recently. But we also shared the request from the trustee, and that was shared earlier this school year.
From
But that data
Christine.
was not our data. That was
Silver
Sylvan's
Learning,
working with
right,
other
Other
schools.
school districts, okay.
The next agenda items are item 7.01, which is the organization of the board, the appointment of school district treasurer, 7.02, appointment of legal counsel, 7.03, appointment of finance committee, 7.04, appointment of policy committee, and 7.05, appointment of legislative committee. These items were placed on the board because they were not addressed during the organizational board meeting. Questions regarding any of those items?
So I know every year they ask the board to do a treasurer, finance, and policy, right? We are gonna do the policy. We have a date for that already, right?
Correct.
I mean, finance.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Finance with the president and the secretary and with Leela.
Yes, so you're referring to the Board of Finance?
That the state tells us that we have to do.
Yes, so that must be done by January 31st.
Right.
And we're scheduling it to do it on January 28th, the same date as this board meeting.
Oh, it is? Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah, after, okay. So now, oh, there's another committee that, we're gonna add here, and that's the academic committee. And with that committee, from my understanding, to do some stuff that Mr. Gomez, Trustee Gomez is asking about. We can call the individuals in and get the data from them instead of us not, we can get the data. We can call whoever the individual is that we want to come in and for them to give us an update, to show us where we are at, and if there's anything else that they may need to better and help in areas that they may need to help for the students. So that'll be our academic committee.
Would you like that added as 7.06?
Yes.
Yes, we will add it.
Now, my question too is now, I'm going to just assume that the state do know that we do have a CFO person.
Yes.
Why would they ask us to have a treasurer?
So I don't know if Jewel wants to specifically speak to that, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, the simple answer is the state legislature required it. There's just a statutory requirement for the school corporation to designate a treasurer. I think the primary reason, to answer your question, is for accountability. So that it's clear that the board has designated a specific individual pursuant to statute to be responsible for the finances of the district. And if something's not right with the finances of the district, it's the treasurer that they look at. So I think that's the reason, to answer your question.
But we've never appointed anybody, right? We've just used our CFO?
You've
Have you
appointed
all
your
done
CFO
anybody?
as treasurer.
Yeah,
in the
we've done
past.
that.
It's not that it's been someone independent, it's what you've done in the past is appoint your CFO as, you've designated your CFO as the treasurer. It's somewhat of a technicality because it's just compliance with the statutory requirement. Of course, your CFO is already responsible for the district's finances, but they look at the minutes of the board meeting to show on this particular day, this particular board designated that person to be the actual treasurer that's outlined in the statute. So,
Okay.
Attorney Harris, I had followed up on, I thought, Madam President, I had sent her the email from the State Board of Accounts that identifies that as a specific item, specific requirement of the board to, on its generally first day of the year, to assign, assign the positions of legal counsel and school district treasurer. But more so, the treasurer is built into the Indiana code. So it is a requirement, as Attorney Harris mentioned.
Okay. Oh, yes, okay, go ahead. We're going to go to the next item.
Yeah, so those are all the items under the agenda items. The remaining items obviously is public forum.
Oh, no, I got one more. The legal counsel.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, that's item
Oh, you ain't
7.02.
gonna- Oh, okay, yes, Mr. Harris gave me
Yes.
a copy of the amended contract, right? And we all are gonna get a copy of this, and he said the only thing that has been changed were highlighted areas in this contract to put the legal in there, legal counsel in there. So, I don't know, can somebody make us make a copy and, where it's highlighted at, or,
Yes.
so they can take it for their review?
Thank you.
I can add to that if you'd like.
Oh, yes, yes,
Yeah,
Mr.
so, just so that they know,
Thank
there
you.
was a request
Thank you.
made to,
Yeah, that's mine, so you get Dr. Bonet,
can you make sure that the copy is in color? Can you
for
make
the
that?
yellow.
Okay. So the changes are highlighted in yellow, so that way you can go right to what the changes are. But there's an existing contract already with me to serve as your legal counsel. The action of the board as part of the organization meeting appointing legal counsel was intended to, again, go back to the minutes and point to the outside world when the board said, this person's designated to serve as a legal counsel for the district as a whole, right? There isn't that language included in a statute in particular, but it comes up when you need it. So when we do, let's say, a bond refinance, part of the closing requirement for the bond deal that we're doing will be a request to show that in order for me to submit everything I'm submitting and do what I'm doing, I'm designated to be your legal counsel. So after some discussion, the request was made, why don't we put that in your agreement itself so that your designation as the district's legal counsel is made clear there by contract? So at that request, I included it in an amended version of the contract. No other terms of the contract were changed other than it would be amended as of the date of our next meeting, the 28th, and the language that says I'm designated as the legal counsel for the district and is authorized by the board as of the approval of the amendment to act on behalf of the district. So that's the way it reads.
Attorney Harris,
Yes.
could you address the issue that you and I spoke about more recently? There was a member of the corporation who had passed away, and I believe now there's, that entire board is now, there's no representation on that board at all.
Yes.
And so can you explain to the board where
Yep.
we're at?
I can explain that. So that's not necessarily on the agenda, this agenda, but it will need to be on future agendas, on a future agenda. But we have historically, as a district, established building corporations. And the building corporations were designed as a tool to fund the construction of new schools or major renovations of new schools, either one. And separate individual building corporations were created, and boards for those corporations were appointed by the school board to sit on that building corporation to see through the business of that particular entity. And the way they're structured is they're designed for that particular financing option. And once the bond is paid off, then that building corporation dissolves and there's no longer a need for it. But that building corporation is responsible for overseeing that financing structure from its inception to it expires until you satisfy the terms of the bond. If there's ever a refinancing of the bond needed or any other business, that would be the building corporation's business, and it would be brought by that building corporation to the board itself for review and approval. So I say all that just to say why these things exist. there's a building corporation left. I don't remember which school that it's for, but there is still one that's in existence because the bond remains outstanding. That's a Leela question, not mine. But she could tell you which one it's for. But anyway, that building corporation has been around for so long, everyone has now passed away that served on that building corp. So there is a need for this board to appoint new members to that board because there does come a need for us to conduct some business with these building corps. Last year, the remaining member of the building corp actually had to come to my office to sign some paperwork. It took us forever to hunt down this particular individual, and unfortunately, in the last several months, he has passed away. So once we get into that situation again and need some authorization from the building corp, we won't be able to do it. Oh, I remember what we needed. We received a request from the state for a small easement on one of the school properties, and it was for a real small sliver, but they needed to be granted access. And the building corp is the one that has to do that because the property is in the building corp's name. Well, I didn't have anyone authorized to sign it, and I couldn't just skip that entity and bring it right to the board.
Thank you.
So that's an example of why we need it in the business we still conduct. But I don't have a board right now to help when things like that come up. So thanks for remembering that.
So what would the name of that board be?
Building corporation.
Yeah, they're not all the same. It varies depending upon the school. I can get the specific name for you,
I'll tell you
but it
straight.
does end in, it's something building corporation. Normally, it speaks to the school that we're talking about, but I'll get it for you.
How many was on the board?
3.
So 3 people?
Mhm.
And so how does this come about? We have to pick the people and vote on them?
Yes,
Is it a paid money involved in this or what?
there can be. Yep. Yep, there can be. Yeah.
Well, you're gonna get that information for us, right, to see how to.
If
how
you
this
ask me, I'm
goes.
going to tell you, so.
Okay, go ahead, trustee Smith. Go ahead, trustee Smith.
Attorney here.
So, Madam President,
Yes.
Attorney Harris, so the board appoints this person?
Appoints the entire board, not just a person, appoints the 3-member board.
The 3 people.
Oh,
And
okay.
we need 3 members
Oh, you
right
need
now.
3 members? Oh,
Yes.
I only had 1 left because the others had passed
oh,
away, so it
okay,
ended up
okay,
being a
because
1-person board,
everybody-
but,
oh,
right.
Okay.
I will say that Mr. Weems at one time sat on one of those corporation boards, and, you know, I'd like to offer his name as one of those people that we should consider since he has some previous experience serving on the building corporation board.
What's his name?
George Weems.
Oh, George. I thought you
Yes.
said Mr. Means. George Weems. Oh, okay. He was the person that sat there. Okay. Okay.
So when you do decide to take up this bit of business, it probably would be good for Leela to come in the conversation as well. And she's got a perspective on how she deals with the building corps. I only know it from a legal point of view, but she transacts some financial business and could bring you up to speed on what's required there. And that will probably weigh in on your decision of who the appropriate people are to serve on the board.
So, one more. Now, the meeting that we're gonna have, with Leela for the, turning in the documents for the state, do we need to make do we need to have the 2 individuals on here, down here too?
No, so, once again, President Gibson King is referring to the annual Board of Finance meeting, which every school board needs to have by January 31st. That is a public meeting. It will have its own agenda and I believe it is posted on our website already. So it is a meeting where you will conduct that business as one of those 5 agenda items: the election of a president, the election of a secretary.
So, on the day we're gonna have our school board meeting?
So we're going to have it on the same day if we have our regular school board
It's
meeting.
gonna be you and Joel appointed to that, just for that one meeting. Okay, and, yeah, and,
And just for clarifying, that the Board of Finance meets once a year.
yes.
It is not the Finance Committee.
Committee, right, okay, once a year. Okay, and then, Okay.
We have one more comment?
No, that's it for me. Just trying, my man rattling around here.
Just want to remind our school board that tomorrow at our home basketball game, we will be having school board trustee appreciation night. So we're inviting all of our school board members to come and attend the basketball game. I believe our director, Gordon, and our coach have asked us to at least be there by the ending of the junior varsity before the varsity begins.
What time is that then?
You said 6 o'clock? Yes.
You know what that is.
Should be about 6:30.
6:30, okay.
Yeah, I'm planning on getting there around 6 o'clock. And then my only other comment is to, once again, as we are addressing several concerns in our community regarding recent laws and changing laws regarding immigration and changing immigration laws, this school city, under my leadership, working with our team, both with our attorney and under guidance from the AASA, which is the American Association of Superintendents, as well as the IAPSS, which is the Indiana Association for Public School Superintendents, also consulting with peers in the Northwest region, to make sure that our students are safe. We have, I believe, today fully addressed everything we need to do to make sure our students are safe. We will be issuing a brief statement to reinforce, communicate to our community as well.
Okay. Well, there are no more questions. So this concludes our work session. Do we need a vote?
Madam
adjourn it.
Secretary, I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, and I will second it. Oh. Once we hit it.